thank you everyone for joining us this evening at the London Marketer group, the Marketing Cloud edition of that. This session is about demystifying CDP, not CPQ. That would be a very different talk. So I'm Kerry Townsend, and this is my co-host Jimson. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, this is really me. I am Astro in disguise. I'm Jimson. I work for Cloud Analysts, and we are a boutique marketing cloud partner with Salesforce. I've had the experience to work with all of the 8 studios of Marketing Cloud plus Core, and I'm really looking forward to this talk because I find the next few topics are going to be really a bit confusing for some people. So I think we'll get some clarity. Ask questions, raise your hand, and we'll get to the bottom of all the different product lines of Marketing Cloud. Kerry?
Cool. Yep, and I'm Kerry Townsend. I'm a manager at Accenture. I've been working in and around Salesforce for quite a long time, and more recently with Marketing Cloud, predominantly in delivery. So I'm also very interested in this particular topic because I think it's going to be a massive growth area. Okay, so today we're going to start with a welcome, which is this. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the name change, which you may or may not have spotted, some other sort of public service announcements, and then we're going to hand over to our guest speaker this evening, Chuma, who's going to talk to us about Salesforce CDP. We hope to have a reasonable amount of time for questions and discussion, and I'd like to suggest, particularly with this topic, there's no such thing as a silly question, right? Because this is a new area or a changing area for a lot of people. So therefore, you know, it's interesting that we get into the detail. So if I just talk briefly about our name change, so up until this point, you will have noticed that we were called the B2C Marketer Group in London, and our sister group, the Pardot Group, was the B2B Group. Now, recently those names have updated, and now we are now the London Marketer brackets Marketing Cloud Group. So although it's a very subtle change, just to make sure that you don't get a little bit confused around that, particularly as we know that Salesforce themselves use a lot of similar naming for a lot of similar different products, and sometimes that can be confusing, such as Lightning, and all of those different things. So now we specifically do have Marketing Cloud in the title, which I personally think is a good thing because it, you know, we predominantly talk about Marketing Cloud, in fact exclusively talk about Marketing Cloud. So it's good to have that called out to make it easier for people to find. And then I'm going to, Jimson, if I hand over to you for some of these highlights.
Yeah, I'll just take 3 minutes to highlight some of the key things that's coming up this month and next month. So this talk is a lot about CDP, Customer 360 audiences, and I think it's going GA or general availability starting October 20th, which is about a month away. I highly recommend if you want to learn more about this, there are lots of trailheads on there. I lost my screen, but that's fine. Yeah, so I lost my screen, but it's okay. It's a trailhead link over here. You can just search trailhead for Customer 360. And let's not forget, we have 2 release webinars, videos coming up. One is next week on the Winter 21 and all the relevance. That's 5 p.m. our time. And then next month is the, 5 times a year we get the Marketing Cloud updates, and that's October 29th, and that's the new feature overview for Marketing Cloud. The links are here. We'll make it available afterwards if you want. Please sign up, and hopefully there'll be recordings as well. That's it for me on the highlights for this month.
Cool. And can I just check, can everybody see the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So another thing that I wanted to just talk about was that there are now Marketing Cloud ideas in the idea exchange prioritization. So I'm not sure if many of you, if everyone's aware of this being more on a Marketing Cloud than a Salesforce side, but the ideas exchange is where you log suggestions on how the product can be improved. And in the last year or so, Salesforce have reimagined how that works. So typically what happened was that you would put ideas on there and then they would be voted up over a number of different years, and some of them could have been quite old. I definitely know that there are some community members that used to mark the birthdays of some of their ideas because they really wanted those to be included, but they hadn't yet. And then really based off a tweet by Steve Moe where he wrote on Twitter that the ideas exchange was where ideas went to die. Salesforce took action and reinvigorated how that works. So what has happened now is that 3 times a year, there's a window of opportunity where Salesforce look at some of the ideas that are coming up, and they prioritize those, and then they pick maybe a handful of them, maybe about something like 8, and they open that up back to the community and they say, hi, these are ideas that we could put into one of the future releases. Please, can you prioritize these? And you have 100 coins, which you can allocate in any weighting that you want to those particular ideas. So up until this point, it's only been sales and service and analytics ideas that have been on there. But for the first time, there are Marketing Cloud ideas that you can log on to the Ideas Exchange and you can vote up. Well, it's not vote, but you can prioritize. So I'm therefore making a huge call to the Marketing Cloud community to go, please go in and do this and have your voice heard. And the 2 ideas are a super message utilization report and a recycling bin for content. And I think it's one of the reasons I think this is important is because if the Marketing Cloud community don't engage with this process, then we're less likely to see some of the ideas that we want be prioritized for the future, right? So please go and make your voice heard. This is open till the 28th of September, and you can go onto, like there's a link here which is prioritize the Ideas Exchange, but if you go to the Trailblazer community, again, trailblazer.salesforce.com, it's one of the tabs in there. So I can also send out a link for that afterwards. So please, a call to arms, get on the site and start voting things up.
All right.
And now we're going to hand over to our main speaker. So Chuma, thank you for joining us today. So I know you through your work with partner enablement, and I know that you've been talking about this sort of topic with partners, but that might not be as accessible. So it's really great to have you here today. So I'll stop my screen share, hand over to you, and then you can give an introduction to yourself and step into the topic.
Okay, great. So hopefully I'll be able to share again. So
Perfect.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, working. Thank you.
All right, great. So thank you everybody for taking your time out to join. So my name is Chuma Ulasi. I work for Salesforce in partner enablement around data and identity products and customer 360 audiences. So I've been working at Salesforce for about three years now. I joined through acquisition of Crux, which is a Salesforce DMP. But since then, I started out in professional services, but now I focus more on partners and partner enablement and helping partners build their practice around these types of products. So today I'm going to talk you through, and it's going to be really brief, but I'm going to probably rush through it in quite a high speed. I'm going to talk to you about the evolution of some of these products around the data and identity suite, namely Audience Studio, Customer 360 Audiences, and Interaction Studio, and what this product evolution looks like. Now, this is more of a vision type conversation. It's not necessarily, there aren't any roadmap slides in this presentation. Actually, I'm going to do a roadmap session with product in a couple of weeks' time around 360 audiences, where you can ask more QA and all of that. This is more about where we are going, so that you guys can have perspective when you're in front of customers, understand product positioning, and understand where we are trying to get to. And when I invite product managers onto the platform that I have, we will talk more about product roadmap and what we're going to be doing in H1, H2, etc. So that's just to tee it up. So let's get started on this. So as always, forward-looking statement. Always make any buying decisions based on real product, not based on vision. And this is particularly pertinent for this conversation because there's a lot of vision involved. So we're going to talk about the evolution of Audience Studio. I'm going to introduce Customer 360 Audiences. and then real-time interaction studio, just so that you guys get a perspective of how all of these products really intersect and fit. So if we just a little bit on historical context, if you think about the marketer problems, there's a collection of silos in marketing, which you guys all know about, whether it's the ESP, the DMP, web, and app. And data is being collected, but information is not necessarily talking together. And this has created a proliferation of marketing software. So there are tons of marketing platforms, software vendors providing marketing solutions. There's about 5,000 on this slide, but you can see it's pretty confusing. So if you can imagine you're a marketer trying to find a single source of truth across all of your marketing technology, that's going to be pretty difficult. But let's just look at how the product suite that Salesforce has is seeking to solve some of these problems, and specifically around Audience Studio, the imminent release of the CDP and Interaction Studio. So let's talk about Audience Studio. Now, I don't know how much you guys know about Audience Studio, but let's talk about some of the evolutions within the industry. I will just give a basic background. Audience Studio is a data management platform. It's about ingesting pseudonymous data, segmenting it for your business purposes, and then activation, right? So it was born out of traditional ad tech, so advertising technology, but there's been fundamental changes within the industry that has accelerated our move into the CDP space. So when we started with Audience Studio, the main use cases are around cookies, and it was about media use cases. Data was, there was more black box data in terms of third-party data partnerships, more aggregation of data, and there were no real trust frameworks around how that data is used. GDPR wasn't in place. So there were a lot of different tactics whereby you can collect data, use that data for modeling, and activate that data. However, if we fast forward to where we are today, because of the change in the regulatory environment, and some of those changes are, for example, that Google announcing that they're going to deprecate the use of third-party cookies, GDPR, CCPA, California. This has changed the world in which we live from an ad tech perspective, and Audience Studio was built from an ad tech perspective. And some of these changes are, the use of identifiers. So there's been a shift from cookies to more persistent identifiers. And when I say persistent identifiers, I'm talking about the likes of, hashed email, mobile identifiers, first-party IDs, or over-the-top IDs if you're on Roku devices, etc., or any other type of ID to identify a user. And marketers are looking for more omnichannel experiences. So whereas in the past, the focus was more on like social display and in programmatic environments, now there's been a combination or an intersection between some of those programmatic environments and some of those known channels like email. And as we know, because of the regulatory environment and the change there has been a push from a consumer perspective for more transparency. So what are you actually doing with the data? And from a legal perspective, you have to get consent and you have to abide by privacy regulation. So all of these type of shifts has meant that Audience Studio has had to evolve to compensate, right? So, but we've seen this has been on the horizon for a long time. So the death of the third-party cookie, as people like to pronounce, is not a new thing. People have been talking about it for many, many, many years. And Audience Studio has made that shift in the sense that we handle hashed emails, we handle mobile identifiers. If a customer has its own unique first-party ID, we can handle that as well. Or any over-the-top device ID, any Roku device ID, whatever ID they want to use, Audience Studio can handle that, all within a privacy-compliant way for the purpose of segmentation and activation. So that's not been a problem. But the idea of identity, which is a concept that we'll come back to, is a particularly important one. And that's just because of the sheer proliferation of channels and types of devices. So if you think about the old days, maybe it was just the cookie and maybe postal address or maybe email. Now we think about devices, we're thinking about mobile device, and even when you're on a mobile, it could be iOS or Ad ID, and you're thinking about point of sale or text, social, all of these different platforms produce a number of different devices, and all of those devices have to relate back to a specific user. So the identity management is a key component of Audience Studio functionality. And as we move into CDP world, you'll see that identity management is also a key component. So it's something that we will continually come back to, and it's something that the industry is continually trying to grapple with those challenges, especially as legislation changes. So what are we talking about here? So hitherto we've been focused on this top layer. So if you think about Audience Studio, where we have our infrastructure that's placed on our media. So whether that's display media, video media, search media. So as people are interacting on the web, you're collecting that data. You can embed your pixels into emails, or you can embed pixels into any other infrastructure to capture interactions. When people users visit sites, you're able to embed what we call a control tag, so that you can capture any interaction on site. And on mobile, you can also capture that type of interaction, as well as second-party and third-party interactions. All of that comes into Audience Studio for the purpose of activation. And that's primarily into what we call the programmatic environment for buying inventory, ad inventory at scale, or for dynamic content optimization or on site, or for site personalization. So, and that's all based off pseudonymous ID, so that it's not PII data. It's so you cannot personally identify the user from those data sets. So down below, we're looking more at what we call the CDP type data, or the typical CRM type data, where you're dealing with known interactions, whether that's known loyalty interactions where you have the name, address, or any type of CRM data, or any type of purchase data. That's typically where the CDP or the known interactions come into play. Marketing cloud data comes into play. And then you have your activation again to some of your known channels where you're interacting and you're targeting users based on a known identifier, right? So the whole idea is about the CDPs, how do we combine these worlds together? Now, even today, we have tactics whereby you're able to go from the known to the unknown. So for example, in Audience Studio, you can build a segment of what we call unknown users. They are pseudonymous identifiers, so users that have interacted on your website, and you can activate that segment, or you can communicate with those users on a known channel, like through email, for example, via Journey Builder. So we have a connection there, and that whole tactic is called re-identification. It's going from that unknown or that pseudonymous interaction to a known interaction. It's called re-identification, and we have tactics to do that through our integration from Audience Studio to Marketing Cloud via Journey Builder. So that's called re-identification. And if you want to go the other way, it's called onboarding. And the typical onboarding use case is if a marketer may have 10 million records of known addresses, their email addresses, maybe their lapsed users, and he wants to what we call onboard those users. So he wants to make them digitally activatable or addressable. So through a process of onboarding, he can onboard them and get a cookie identifier for those known profiles. Now, there are companies out there that specialize in this, like LiveRamp, that can say, hey, Mr. Marketer, give me those records, and I will make them digitally addressable. Audience Studio also allows you to do that in certain markets natively, and where we can't do it natively, you can go through a partner like LiveRamp. But the whole concept is onboarding of your first-party data into a pseudonymous space so that you can activate them in that unknown digital programmatic environment. So as we move into the CDP world, what we're trying to accomplish is a single source of truth for all of your marketing data, both known and unknown. Okay, so it's a single source of truth for customer resolution, a single source of truth for identity, and consent management, a single source of truth for onboarding and re-identification, segmentation, activation, and storage. So this is the vision. And then as we are able to collect all of that data, segment that data in a single place, you're then able to activate it not just to those known channels, but to those programmatic channels. So that's the idea behind Customer 360 audiences and CDP in general. So let's talk a little bit about Customer 360 audiences. So Customer 360 Truth is the overarching platform that encompasses a lot of this technology, and that includes Customer 360 Data Manager, as you all probably know, which is that ID resolution piece. 360 Audiences is the marketer piece, which deals with the whole ingestion of your marketer data and the activation across channels. So the key capabilities of 360 Audiences are as follows: data management, which is about the ingestion and transformation of data into a marketer-friendly model. And then you want to unify that around a customer profile. Then you want to be able to segment, and then ultimately derive insights. And that's all built on the Lightning platform, so that you can have access to all of the benefits that you have when you build on calls. So those are the key capabilities. So let's talk about identity resolution when we think about Customer 360 audiences. And when you look at this picture, you're looking at the person in the middle, and with these three rings, you've got the known, the recognized, and the anonymous. So the anonymous, as we talked about, is that anonymous interaction when you're on web or when you're in your mobile. You haven't necessarily logged in, but you've dropped an identifier, whether that's a mobile identifier, a cookie. You've made an anonymous interaction. So when you go from that known to the anonymous, again, we're talking about, that's where the onboarding capability is, that's the onboarding capability that we're referring to. Again, you're a marketer, you have 10 million emails, you want to digitize them. You through the process of onboarding, can onboard that and go from the known to the anonymous. Again, this is all about identity resolution. How do we stitch identities together? And then when you're going from the anonymous back to the recognized, that's again going from the likes of Audience Studio, that programmatic space, back into the known channel. Again, it's all about stitching identities together. It's all about identity resolution, and that's the re-identification use case. And then what we're typically used to in the data manager world or in the Customer 360 world is that kind of exact match type of functionality, whether it's fuzzy logic or you're using an exact match via email. These are all of the different types of ways in which you're looking to resolve identity. And the resolution of identity is key to any type of CDP initiative, because you can have as much records coming from multiple disparate systems, but they also need to be resolved around some type of identity. So it's a key component, and it's something that we will continue to develop on as the first release of Customer 360 comes out. We'll continue to develop on this, but it's important to highlight that there is a long history of identity resolution, both in the DMP space and in the known space. And Customer 360, we want that to be a place where we start to bring all of these technologies together to truly get a 360 view of the customer. So let's just talk a little bit of and this is really, really brief, because like I said, I will be organizing a session with product to talk a little bit in more detail about Customer 360 audiences. But data ingest is about just being able to ingest data from your disparate sources really easily, whether that's from sales or service, or whether from Marketing Cloud. We have out-of-the-box connectors to pull data in from Marketing Cloud, and you have access to S3 as well to be able to pull data in, and also the ability to transform that data on the fly to ensure that data comes in really easily and a marketer can perform some of these tasks. And we also have this concept of a customer information model. So this makes it really easy for marketers to bring their data and map it to an existing model. Yes, you can build your own custom objects. So you may have an object that doesn't exist in our model, But if it's an out-of-the-box connector, it maps automatically to the model that already exists. And if it's, say, a custom bit of data that you want to bring in from S3, you can still map that to our customer information model. It's a way of standardizing data within the platform to make it really customer friendly. And all of this is unified around a single profile so that you can see historical data, transaction data around people. And that plays into the whole piece around identity resolution, which will be an evolving concept within the platform as we move forward. And then ultimately you want to be able to segment and segment in a marketer-friendly way, produce populations and get quick insights and do this on the fly. And again, the key benefit here is just being able to pulling your data across different business units, pulling your data across different sources, segmented it around your individuals for the purpose of activation. So when you're thinking about Customer 360 audiences, you're thinking about that traditional data lake where you're able to pull in all of that data at scale, but having the ability to ultimately drive that segmentation and that activation. The next piece is activate. And activation is a key component, because where a CDP ultimately differs from a data lake is that activation piece, right? So whether you're trying to activate back into Marketing Cloud, or whether you're trying to activate into Sales or Service, or activate to S3, or activate into the programmatic space, activation is a key component. And this is something that will evolve over time, but it's not just good enough to get insights. You need activation. And that's where some of the other functionalities around Interaction Studio come into play as well. And we'll talk a little bit about Interaction Studio in regards to where it ties into that long-term vision. And insights is about, deriving insights, whether that's computed scores or propensity models or any of the stuff that we are used to when we think about Audience Studio, when we think about lookalikes and overlap reportings. That's going to be evolving over time. Obviously, everything has to be done in a privacy compliant way. We already have a trust framework within Audience Studio, and we'll have a trust framework where you will be able to upload the relevant consent within CDP. So ultimately, in this brief summary, the key differentiator is the ability to ingest data into our customer information model, resolve identity across known and unknown, segment on the fly, and activate, and then derive insights. So that's what we're talking about when we think about Customer 360 audiences. So in the last few minutes, let's just have a quick think about where Interaction Studio plays into all of this. So when you think about Interaction Studio is not our CDP. Customer 360 audiences is our CDP, but as some of you probably know, we purchased a product called Evergage a few months back, well, maybe about 6 months to a year back now. So Evergage, now Interaction Studio 2.0, is what we call our real-time interaction management platform. But Evergage has some CDP type functionality. So in order to explain how Evergage fits into the vision, it's important to understand how the market perceives what a CDP is and the different types of CDPs within the market. So when we think about CDPs in the market, the way we look at it is that there are two types of CDPs. There are CDPs that are systems of insight, and there are CDPs that are systems of engagement. So the CDPs that are systems of insights are really good at segmentation, exploration, and the CDPs that are systems of engagement are really good for activation. So let's just extrapolate on that point in just a little bit more detail. So what are the differences between those CDPs that are systems of insight and engagement? So we have some CDPs that are great for data capture. So they're great for collecting data from all of your sources and channels. They're great for unification and cleansing data and around a persistent ID. They're great for data harmonization and segmentation. So great for querying data. And we also have those CDPs that are really specialized in web personalization, dynamic content optimization, personalization. So that's SMS and push, next best offer management. Those are the engagement type of CDPs. So those are really the two types of CDPs that are in the market when you're thinking about what a CDP does, right? So there are a few out there, and there are, if you look at this table here, it's broken down into insight CDPs, engagement CDPs, and we believe that we are in a different type of category, and that's the enterprise CDP. So the insight CDP are great for building a persistent unified profile about their weaknesses that is on the real-time activation, and some of the competitors there are in the right-hand corner. The engagement CDPs are great for real-time engagement, fast decision management, but they're not particularly great for data harmonization and cleansing and analytics. So we position ourselves as an enterprise CDP. We're a bit later to the game, but and some of the bigger players like the Adobes, the Microsofts are in that place. But our strengths is that we benefit from that insight piece where you're able to pull in that data, harmonize it against the customer information model, but then also we have the channels for activation, and that's the thing that we will want to double down on. And that's one of the reasons why we invested in Evergage. And Evergage's strength, although it has the capacity and capability to ingest data around the customer profile, what part of its core competency is its ability to engage around real-time next best offers and real-time activation across different channels. So when you combine the functionality of Customer 360 audiences with the likes of Evergage or the likes of Audience Studio, you start to see the enterprise capabilities. And I think that's the key thing that we are thinking about when you're thinking about the enterprise component of a CDP. It's not just a piece of technology that you buy, but it's really a digital transformation process and a journey where you're looking at all of the data assets, you're looking at pulling in all of those data assets and then segmenting them, and then thinking about the channels that you'll activate over time. And that's not a job that's going to be accomplished in a day, 6 weeks, 6 months, or a year, but it's a journey. So when you're thinking about the concept of an enterprise CDP, you're thinking about how can we bring all of the power of these technologies to bear to deploy all of that. And what we will be focused on at Salesforce is how can we, build tighter integration between these products to drive these use cases. So some of the value of Interaction Studio is listed on this slide: the ability to capture insights, optimize the experience with built-in AI and engagement anywhere through APIs and integrations, and A/B testing to monitor success and continual learning of the platform. So they are separate products. So CDP and Interaction Studio are separate, but as an enterprise offering, as you combine these functionalities and as the product evolves, we will start seeing how we can combine these functionalities to drive more value for our customers. So in short, the enterprise CDP is about that whole piece. Is about the profile resolution across known and unknown, the combination of known and unknown audiences, and ingestion of data from all of your disparate systems, the segmentation of that data, and then the ability to activate not just in known channels, but in unknown channels. And we see Interaction Studio, which is powered by Evergage, as a big part of that. So that's the quick summary there. Over to you, Kerry.
Lovely. Yep, no, lovely too. I was just trying to find the unmute button for that awkward silence.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Me too.
So I don't know if we've had any questions. Jimson, have we had
there's one question which I'll get to, but let me ask the first question here. I got a lot of questions, but I got the very first
I have a lot too.
Yeah. Okay, we'll take turns here. So the first question is, we know that Customer 360 is a $0 SKU, so it's no charge if you're a customer. Do you know what is the minimum requirement to qualify for C360 if you have, say, Marketing Cloud?
No, sorry, I don't know if pricing has actually been officially sorted out in terms of.
Yeah, I heard it's free, but I think you need to have a certain minimum, like maybe Marketing Cloud corporate or enterprise, or you need to have a CRM unlimited, not enterprise. I don't know. I thought there was a difference in.
Yeah, there's definitely sales enablement happening right now, but I'm not 100% sure on the details of what the conclusion has been in terms of what you need as a minimum. But I think, and you can't quote me on this, I think if you have messaging, you get it thrown in, but I'm not sure.
Okay, and the last
question, that's a very forward-looking statement there, isn't it?
Yeah, very forward-looking. Yeah. We'll edit the video. Quick question here. So 2 years ago, we had the good folks of Thunderhead come and speak at our user group, which they were calling Interaction Studio. So now today, it's Evergage is the official, I guess, back-end product behind Interaction Studio.
Yeah.
Okay, so just quite to clarify that people got.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it was Interaction Studio powered by Thunderhead.
Yeah.
And since the acquisition, is Interaction Studio powered by Evergage.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, Carrie, your turn for questions before we get to the Q&A.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I had some just sort of more foundational type questions, as in, so Google are looking to deprecate the cookies. What's the time frame for that?
So it's 2 years. So we're looking about, I think it's about a year and 9 months now, because they announced it a few months back. So yeah.
Yeah, so organizations have a little bit of time to rethink what they're doing in that space.
And we're seeing a lot of talk around, consortiums coming out where almost walled gardens, where people are creating their own identifiers. And if you subscribe to those consortiums, you can partake of the pooled resources and the pooled identity graph within those types of scenarios. What we also recommended to our customers is that, build up your own first-party data asset as well, so that you are not going to necessarily be too badly hit by this type of change in the market. And also think about other identifiers out there that you can use, and don't be too over-reliant on the cookie. As we talked about in the previous slides, there's over-the-top IDs, there's mobile identifiers, there's other first-party identifiers that you can use to build up your own first-party stack as well.
Yeah.
Okay, good. There's a question on the Q&A from Tim. He asked, if I understand correctly, you can collect online tagging without a DMP already in place? And if so, is the collection method the same as Crux? That is the control tag / data layer and pixels?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, for today, the CDP, there won't be a tag for collecting online data today. So we will have connectors into Marketing Cloud to get to pull in click and engagement data, and there'll be connectors into Salesforce Core. There'll be connectors into S3, so you'll be able to upload data into S3. But going forward, as product releases, there will be the ability to collect data in the same ways that you can with the DMP. Because, with the DMP, you can embed pixels within media, you have the control tag for website, you have SDK, so it's more advanced in its data collection capabilities.
Okay,
and just to step back with some terminology there, right? So in this instance, Crux, the original, became Salesforce DMP, which has now become Salesforce Audience Studio.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's pretty good, Kerry.
So they're all the same product. Right?
Yeah, they're all the same.
And then we've got Salesforce 360 Audiences, which is a different product that focuses on known data, whereas the Salesforce Audience Studio focuses on unknown data. and then there will be a way of, there are methods of crossing between that known and unknown space.
Yeah, so today, if we just forget CDP or 360 audiences, and we just think about the known and unknown between Marketing Cloud, because Marketing Cloud deals with the known, and we think about Audience Studio, there is a way which we can go between the two spaces. So you can send a segment from Audience Studio into Marketing Cloud and initiate a journey, or you can go from Marketing Cloud into Audience Studio. So a data extension in Marketing Cloud via Ad Studio into Audience Studio. So there's a way to go back and forth. And when we think about CDP, where the vision is to be able to have the CDP to be a single place to collect unknown and known. In the first iteration, it's going to be focused on known data, but we do want to delve into the unknown realm as well.
Okay, there's a part 2 to Tim's question.
Yeah.
And, is it a straightforward integration between Crux and Customer 360 if we already have a mature Audience Studio implementation? And is there a lot of overlap between the products? And thus we'd be paying for 2 different products at once?
Yeah, so that's an extremely good question. So they are 2 separate products solving 2 separate different use cases. And that's why I did caveat at the start that the vision for Audience 360 is to tackle that unknown and is to build up the capabilities around activation, third-party data providers within the platform, et cetera, et cetera. Some of the features that currently exist within Audience Studio. So in the first iterations of Customer 360 audiences, you won't find a lot of the functionality that exists within Audience Studio. We'll be focused on the known space, and they will be focused to activate into the known channels and to S3, etc. But we will be building up over time. So the use cases will still be quite separate. We probably have tactics for integrating or going between both systems as we do with Marketing Cloud. But the vision would be to shift some of that functionality into Audience 360 audiences so that you have a single place for that type of known and unknown data.
Okay, perfect. Any more questions? I got some questions, but anybody else want to ask a question? Raise your hand if you want to speak to the microphone or camera. Or...
Particularly if, you know, we have people that already use like Crux, or like what was Crux, and want to explore that in more detail, please feel free to raise your hand and unmute.
Okay, well, I have a question.
Or, or if anybody has any questions about the fact that a lot of this terminology is new, right? So we can take questions on either end of the spectrum.
Okay, so I'll ask a question while we're waiting for people to come up with questions here. So we know activation is really like a two-way street, right? There's onboarding and then there's re-identification. Now I don't know if the safe harbor or forward-looking statement, I know if you wanted to buy data, let's say you had an unlimited budget, unlimited motivation, and you want to buy 10,000 contacts, that product was supposed to be called Data Studio. Is that still around, or are they not scrap that?
Yeah, so Data Studio is a way in which, so the way Data Studio came about was, it's a way in which publishers typically, and when I talk about publishers, I'm talking about some of these bigger, like, the Financial Times, News Corp, some of these publishers that have great data, but they typically monetize their websites through context, through the fact that someone visits their site, is on the front, for example, a CEO is on the Financial Times reading about derivatives, and therefore an advertiser may pay X amount to target that CEO. So that's the primary source, or a major source of revenue for a typical publisher. However, a publisher may say, actually, I want to decouple my data from my content and sell my data. How can I sell that data in a privacy compliant way to another company? So for example, Tommy Hilfiger or Skyscanner knows who's going on holiday to a hot country because they know who's looking for certain flights. Tommy Hilfiger wants to sell more swimwear. So Skyscanner can sell that data to Tommy Hilfiger so that Tommy Hilfiger can target those users in an appropriate way because they're in market for hot destinations. Data Studio is the platform that allows that deal to take place so that a data seller can come to the platform and put its data into Data Studio, and the data buyer can come to that same platform and choose to buy that data and then use that data for purposes in an agreed manner. So within Data Studio, there are controls about how you use that data, for how long you can use that data, where you can use that data, and all sorts of restrictions like that. So that's the purpose of that tool, and that tool is still in existence and in operation.
That's good. I know a lot of marketing cloud projects, you have a lot of streams going on. Your emails, your SMS. So do you recommend when people do buy Audience Studio, just to do the onboarding part first? Just send the data out for activation and just send it out because you don't have time to start playing with Data Studio. You just want to, like what I call it, let it cook. So is that a good strategy to
because I think the key thing when you're thinking about data strategy is to understand what are your first party data assets, first of all, right? So there are two things. It's understanding what your first party data assets are. So what do I have authenticated users? Because you could be a CPG firm and you don't have much people coming to your site. Do I have lapsed users in an email, in some type of CRM system that I want to, onboard somehow? Do I have microsites? Where else is my digital footprint? And then you want to look at your advertising data. Where am I targeting these users on other people's sites, and can I bring that data in? So you're looking at all of your digital data asset, and then you're also looking at your use cases. What do I want to actually accomplish? And what do I want to know? And the delta between the two may help you to understand where I need to go for data partnerships, like in the case of Tommy Hilfiger and Skyscanner as an example. So once you've evaluated, once you've tagged up your site, you've tagged up your mobile SDK, you're importing your first party data into the platform, you've tagged up your media assets, you're able to understand your data, the data that belongs to you. You're able to correlate or map that to your use cases to determine where your data gaps exist. And then you can maybe take the next step, which is the Data Studio step, and decide, hey, where do I need to go? Or what kind of partnerships do I need to initiate to fill the gaps in order to fulfill the next use case or next set of use cases?
Yeah, that makes sense. I see a lot of like medium and small businesses only think of using Google ads, Google AdWords, just to get new clients, right? New acquisitions. And I find that a lot of them are not even aware about this whole DMP Audience Studio piece of advertising okay. There's a question here.
And that's the key thing about what we found. Like there was a big move towards, to your point, a lot of brands, even bigger brands, have relied on a lot of the agencies, etc., to control their data in their own DMPs and their own systems. But we saw a lot of in-housing take place, and we've seen that where marketers are taking more control. They're buying the technology, they're buying the marketing cloud stack, they're buying their own DMPs, and they're starting to take control. So even if they swap and change agencies, the data still remains in-house, and they're building up their own first-party assets. So they're less susceptible to some of these changes in the market, and even changes in the way tech and the walled gardens change your access to data, because they've been collecting their own and building their own first-party data asset.
Great. There's a question here, which I know the answer, but I want your answer too, Chuma. So the question is from Lucas: what time and resources are required to stand up and implement Audience C360? So yeah, I know. Okay, well, the first answer is, if you want to learn more about C360, there's a trail mix from Tracy Novotny, which is one of my links on my slides, and I think that's the one that has all her suggested references and videos and a couple of Trailhead badges. So the question to you, Chuma, is time, resources, estimate for a project. How long would it take to implement a proper Audience C360?
Yeah, so that's something that's been worked on even internally with CSG, because we've been in pilot stage at the moment, right? And it's about to be released. We're looking at some of the resources that are required. And, you know, Audience 360 Audiences was made to be marketer friendly, right? So it was made, the whole idea behind it was that a marketer would be able to ingest the data, build the segments, and activate, okay? So in its purest form, we have connectors, for example, to Marketing Cloud. You can pull in your data into Marketing Cloud. It's automatically mapped to our customer information model. You can segment it yourself, and then you can activate. Okay, that's in the simplest form. But if you want to get more technical and you have, you know, you have data from point of sale systems, loyalty systems, and you want to do some data cleaning first before you ingest that, and then you want to make sure you map that data to the right objects within the customer information model within our system to ensure that when you're building the right segments, it all makes sense and it's all harmonized across your different systems. Then that's when you start to, you know, require maybe a technical architect or information architect to ensure that it's done correctly, and then, you know, a business consultant to ensure that you have the right use cases working. So, you know, then you're looking at an implementation that can take the typical types of implementation, like 8 to 12 weeks, to ensure that the scope is correct, the use cases are defined, the information model is set up correctly, data's coming from the right places, and, you know, you're able to measure ROI. So I say in its simplest form, you can use the connectors, pull in data, build your segments, activate. But once you start saying, I want to pull in data from disparate systems, clean it, ensure that it maps to the right model and activate, then, you know, it's going to be just a bit more work.
Good point. Question from Matthew about Evergage. Does that work in both directions? And are there any latencies? So
in terms of like, I guess you're saying data in and data out. So yes, Evergage is super fast, extremely fast. It's a real-time interaction. I don't know how many milliseconds it is, but you're able to receive, it's able to receive a signal based on rules, make a decision, and activate almost immediately. So that's the whole value proposition of its real-time activation piece. And, you know, they have the APIs to pull in data from external systems or activate whether it's on your side or activate into other systems as well via our APIs. And then it's just a question of how quickly the API can consume, the external system can consume it and make use of it. But it's real time.
Yeah, I think you mentioned in your slide that with 30 milliseconds was the time. And I know for QA in my projects, our acceptable time is 80 milliseconds. So if it's under 80, then that to us passes. So 30 is less than 80, so that should work.
Yes, I can't remember the exact, but it's super fast at Evergage.
Yeah, 80 milliseconds is still pretty quick. So. Unless you're on track and field, then that's a false start. But that's another story. Any more questions here?
I have two, if we have. But so the first, my understanding originally with, you know, when it was Salesforce DMP or Audience Studio, was that it was really for clients that had, you know, high volumes of contacts, and that, you know, there was a threshold where you really needed to, you know, be either spending that much amount of money in advertising or have that many contacts to really make that worthwhile. And I'm just wondering, are there any sort of thresholds in terms of, you know, how many users or how many people's data contacts you might have for any of these products?
Well, all I know with 360 Audiences is built for high scalability. So in terms of its ability to scale, it's built on the public cloud. So it's not built on any of the legacy type of infrastructure. So just like with Audience Studio was built on AWS from inception. So we've never had a problem in terms of scalability and ability to ingest data. So that type of thinking, because we built Audience 360 from the ground up, has been replicated in Audience 360. So if you're dealing with millions or even billions of rows, that would not be a problem. Now, in terms of pricing, I don't know how they're pricing, but in terms of the ability to scale and to scale quickly and to build segments really quickly, and for the purpose of activation, that has been a key component of the build from day one. So scale will not be an issue there.
Okay, and if say I'm an organization and I have 100,000 contacts that I work with, are all of these products relevant to me, or the number of people that, like the number of customers that I have, or people that I have first party data on, does it need to be higher?
So in terms of for customer 360 audiences, if your challenge is around first party data, so it's about building your own first party asset and activating that, then that's the tool for you. In terms of if it's just pure first party data and you just want to activate that across messaging or activate that to S3, customer 360 audiences is the tool that you can do it, because you can easily build your segments and activate. If you want to, if you're still focused on some of those, programmatic use cases, on-site use cases, media type use cases, then Audience Studio would be the one. And typically with Audience Studio, you're talking about more impressions. So you're talking about your media impressions, your advertising impressions, your ad impressions as well. So typically the volumes will be higher. So that's where you would focus on Audience Studio.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And I was just wondering, could we slip back to that slide, which was 360 Trust, right? I think there are 4 products on that. Could we just briefly refresh what those are?
360 Trust.
Yep, I remember, oh, there we go, that's the one. Right, so in here, so Data Manager, that was where we were resolving, it's not known, is it? Yeah. Could you just talk us through what those are?
Well, the ones I'm familiar with are Data Manager, which is our data identity resolution across commerce, sales, core, where you get that global party ID. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the one I'm definitely familiar with. Salesforce Identity for Customers. So I'm not 100% familiar with that. Customer 360 Audience is what we've talked about. And the Salesforce Privacy and Data Governance. So this is about consent across the whole of the Salesforce platform. So being able to provide consent for a user that spans all of our products. And that's something that we're working on, and it's in the process of working. So once you provided consent within 360 Audiences, it spans across all of that profile across sales, commerce, and core, wherever we see that user. So that's the whole idea there. Okay,
so and in that instance, the last 3 are still to come, of which we know that Customer 360 Audiences is coming in October.
Yeah, Data Manager has already been released, and there's been a lot of work around that. And Customer 360 Audiences is coming in October. And the privacy and governance piece, that's an ongoing work. There will be provisions within Customer 360 Audiences to ensure that you can provide consent for users, but there's a continual work around consent across the whole of the platform, so that once you've consented in one place, it cascades across all of the different products within the platform.
Lovely. Thank you very much. That's it for my questions.
I think that's it for questions here. Thank you. I think we're out of time as well. So Chuma, thank you again for taking the time after a long week of webinars. So double book, triple book webinars. So I appreciate the time you made for this and to help educate the community. There are a lot of questions on this platform.
I appreciate you having me anytime, and yeah, it's been great just to talk. So thank you.
Carrie, next meetup dates and topics?
I think I want to say it's the 15th of October.
I think it is, yeah.
I think just doing a manual check on that.
And we had a suggested topic, suggested serving. Do you want to mention what that was, Carrie, for a talk?
Yep, just subtly checking the date. You can see it's seamless. Yep, the 15th. Excellent. And we are looking to see whether we can get different Marketing Cloud App Exchange products on to showcase some of those. So if anybody on the call has an App Exchange product relating to Marketing Cloud that they'd really like to see, know a little bit more about, please do let us know.
And there are 2 free ones that you definitely should check out. And one is Query Studio. If you don't have that installed, your orgs, that's your best friend when you're trying to debug SQL statements. Number 2 is Deployment Manager. If you have multiple VUs and you need to deploy config from one to the other, that's another great tool to have. And the third thing, which I want to get, is, does anyone here want to demo a Lightning Web Component, homebrew app or something with our Salesforce core? I know Tracy also introduced that a few months ago, and if you have one that you made or demo, we would love to see that as well. So yeah, so Lightning Web Components, any App Exchange product, next month, this time, Thursday.
Cool. Wonderful. Thank you for joining us, and we'll close the meeting here. See you next time.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.